welcome to Long Distance Review, and welcome to my review of the new album by Korn, entitled Ther. Now, for those of you who don't know who Korn are, firstly, where have you been for the last 15 years? Korn are an American metal band. New metal band is the label given to them because basically they were the band that invented new metal back in 1994. They changed the landscape of heavy music as it was before, and also the immediate landscape of heavy metal music from 94 to the early 2000s, let's say. Everyone of a certain generation remembers where they were or when they first heard Jonathan Davis shout, "Are you ready?" at the start of the Korn album. Are you ready? The first Korn album came out in 1994, as I said, and it was self-titled, and it's still regarded this day to be one of the best heavy metal, new metal albums of all time. They followed it up with Life is Peachy in 1996, and then with the massive million-selling album Follow the Leader in 1998. This was then followed up by Issues, which I think was the most expensive album, or the most expensive metal album, I can't remember now, which came out in 1999, and then Untouchables in 2002. Now, these first 5 albums of Korn are really the golden era of Korn, and it was the golden era of new metal. They became megastars, they really did. For those of you who weren't around in that era, they were a stadium band, they were megastars, they really were. And this was the golden era of new metal. And after this, let's say new metal left the building, but Korn remained. They then released the album Take a Look in the Mirror in 2003. And after this album, guitarist Head left the band. Yeah, that's right, his name was Head. Still is Head. And he left the band in a quite bizarre way by finding God and denouncing all drugs and partying that he'd done with Korn before. And he went off to be, a God botherer, for want of a better phrase, to be a Christian. They then carried on without him and as a 4-piece and released See You on the Other Side in 2005. And then the drummer, David Silvera, left the band. Was probably kicked out of the band, actually, on this occasion. The band continued with a stand-in drummer, who I can't now remember the name of, and they released what they call the Untitled album in 2007, which was pretty rubbish, let's say. They then employed the services of now drummer Ray Luzier and released the album Korn 3, Remember Who You Are. This was a blatant grab at trying to recapture their youth and recapture their early sound, which they'd kind of lost along the way through iffy albums and lineup changes. And they even employed Ross Robinson, the long-term producer, to come back and do this album. And it was okay, let's say. Wasn't anything great. They then released a sort of controversial dubstep album, Path of Totality, which, barring a couple of singles, wasn't exactly fantastic. Head then returned to the band. Still loving God and having his faith, but the rest of the band had kind of grown up and got rid of drugs and things like that, and they all kind of got on along swimmingly. So the band returned to being a 5-piece with the 4 original members and now Ray Luzier on drums. And they released the Paradigm Shift in 2013, and then The Serenity of Suffering in 2016. Now, barring a couple of dips in form, Korn have remained pretty consistent throughout their career. There's a middle period there, which isn't that great, let's say. But this will be their 13th studio album, and it'll be the 3rd with this sort of stable lineup they've had now. A bit of background to this album. Jonathan Davies' wife, Devon Davies, passed away last year in August of a drug overdose, and that really was the catalyst for this album. Whether they were going to do an album or not, this was the catalyst for the writings for this album. Now onto the album itself. Like I said, entitled Ther. It opens up with the famous Korn bagpipes, which don't always open up the albums. That's not what I'm trying to say. They are pretty much always on the albums. Jonathan Davis loves his bagpipes and he brings them onto stage whenever he can. He wears a kilt sometimes as well. So they open up the bagpipes open up the sort of intro track called The End Begins, which is kind of an intro thing, and it has Jonathan Davis screaming, "Why did you leave me?" over it, which kind of sets the tone for the album. The first real song is the song called Cold, which we've heard as a single already. And it has this almost schizophrenic feel to it, with this kind of reggae metal verse, which sort of bounces along, but then it has these death growls and melodic Korn chorus that we've all come to know. What we'll say is Davies' vocals have certainly evolved from the early 90s, and he's got this death growl that he brings out every now and again, which is way better than anything he's ever done in the past, and it's really good to hear it. I think he's a better vocalist now than he ever was. The album continues with the second single, which was taken off the album, which was You'll Never Find Me, which is a pretty atypical Korn riff, a melodic chorus. It's decent enough. It'll be a live favourite, I feel. But I feel, if you look at these on the surface, they're sort of Korn bangers with melodies and hooks and choruses. But look a little bit deeper and you'll find that there's this constant thread of feeling, despair, loss, suffering, guilt, hopelessness. It's a pitch black album, it really is. If you're looking for Korn songs like You'll Want a Single, then you're not going to find them on here. And the album's better off for it. Song titles like The Darkness is Revealing and This Loss, and just a cursory glance at any of the lyrics on this album will give you a taste of what this album's all about. The song Idiosyncrasy feels a little bit different when it comes in. It has this sort of the bass tone that Korn always have, the down-tuned, fieldy bass, is kind of taken away in the verse and it's replaced by this melodic bass line, which I really enjoyed actually. And the song's better off for it. They've always been the masters of the quiet, loud dynamic, which new metal was kind of built on a stage. And this song's really decent one on the album. On the first couple of listens, this album felt a bit top-heavy, I think. But actually, the more I listened to the album, the more interesting the later songs came. If anyone listened to the Jonathan Davis solo album last year entitled Black Labyrinth, this has got a bit of a feel of that to it. Although that album was a bit iffy, let's say. It had some really nice ideas on it, and it was a bit more diverse than the usual Korn album. It was a bit more gothic, I think, and certainly there's a bit more of a feel of that on here, especially in songs like Finally Free. I'll get there eventually. Finally Free, which has this melodic, gothic approach to it, and it has a real sort of sinister edge to it, and it's all shrouded in guilt. And it's really good for that. And I always think Korn are better when they've got this catalyst of darkness behind them. Their first album still regarded as probably their best album. And that's because there was that much suffering and despair behind it, what Jonathan Davis brought to the album, that people could relate to it. And this album's no different. It's better off because it has that darkness behind it. And although I doubt Korn always want to be dark and suffering and you know, it'd be nice to lead an easier life sometimes, their art is better off for it. I never liked them when they were these multi-millionaires. I don't want to hear You'll Want a Single or them covering Word Up. I want this from Korn, and their album's better off for it. The song Ringmaster is an interesting one as well. It has this multi-layered vocal effect from Jonathan Davis, which gives it a sort of call and effect feel with him asking the questions in verses. Jonathan Davis' lyrics have always been a bit of a sticking point for me. I find them quite cringeworthy at times, and on here it's no different. They aren't great, but Jonathan Davis isn't known for his penmanship, let's say, or his wordplay. What you want from Korn is the emotional pull and the feel of the album. You don't necessarily read all the lyrics and think that's incredibly well written. It's the more the feel you get from Jonathan's vocals. There's one song here, it's the Gravity of Discomfort, where he manages to rhyme dominates with hate, with plate, with weight, and break, all in the same section. And it reminded me of that moment, well, this moment.
Stay out of my way, or you'll pay. Listen to what I say.
How about I just go eat some hay? I can make things out of clay and lay by the bay. I just may. What do you say?
Anyway, this album kind of feels like a Jonathan Davis solo album wrapped up in a Korn banner. And that's nothing against the band. It's great to hear that fieldy bass tone. It's great to hear Monkey and Head trade off guitars. And really, no one's asking for David Silvera back. Not that he was a bad drummer, but Ray Luzier is an excellent drummer, and this feels like the Korn lineup. But this album just feels very, very personal to Jonathan Davis, and it obviously is. By the end of the album, you kind of get a sense of this isn't a journey of finding hope at the end of all this suffering. This is just an album that is bleak, and it is an acceptance of suffering, an acceptance of hopelessness, that there is no light. You have to trawl through shit to find solace and relief in it. It's an acceptance of that. The last two songs, entitled This Loss and Surrender in Failure, kind of echo that statement. This album possibly isn't as immediate as some of the other Korn albums, but what it is way more diverse and interesting than a lot of the other Korn albums. And then hopefully my video shut off just there. Only got a few little bits left to say really, just in conclusion. There are a couple of throwaway tracks on here, but apart from that, it's a really, really good album from Korn. And really, at this stage of their career, they've got no right to be this good. I think they've tread water for the last couple of albums, but this is a real return to form for them. And really, 15 years down the line, and new metal is long gone, why are Korn still around and still sounding this vital and this good? And in the year 2019, it's so pleasing to be able to say that they're this good and they're sounding this vital and it's such a good album. Anyway, if you've not checked Korn out for a long, long time, then give this one a go. I think you'll find something on there you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.